It's unfortunate that senseless acts of violence have become more prevalent in our society, leaving many of us wondering what has gone wrong. We will sit in on a concealed carry class and learn more about what knowledge comes with a permit. And our panel discussion with law enforcement will focus on what you need to do to protect yourself when you are out in public and what you need to do if you know someone who is in crisis. The County Seat is next. The County Seat is brought to you this week by Jones and DeMille Engineering, helping to shape your quality of life. Find out more at jonesanddemille.com.
Hello everybody, welcome to the County Seat. Today I'm your host Chad Booth. Today we're going to tackle a topic that is of great concern to people. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it becomes national headlines. We're going to talk about active shooters and the relationship between you, a citizen, and law enforcement who comes to the aid of a situation like that. There are a lot of parts in play, but we want to start with the growing number of people who are becoming engaged in the process of defending themselves, and the growing number of people who are trying to learn about the right thing to do through concealed carry classes.
Everybody's got the right to defend themselves. Even a single cell amoeba will defend itself if it's attacked. And that's just a given natural law.
Kurt Oda is teaching a concealed weapons class today to help this group get their permits. But concealed carry classes aren't as much about how to use a gun as they are about when a gun may be used for defense.
A permit doesn't increase your ability to defend yourself. The laws of self-defense are exactly the same whether you have a permit or not. And it's exactly the same whether you use a gun, knife, rock, or a baseball bat to defend yourself. If you do it wrong, you go to jail. I think it's important for everybody to understand what steps to defend themselves against certain levels of threat.
A relatively new threat that has appeared on the horizon are active shooters. The FBI defines an active shooter as an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. A snapshot of active shooter incidents in the United States between the year 2000 and 2018 reveals some important information about these heinous acts. According to the FBI, there were 277 active shooter incidents over the past 18 years, where 884 people were killed and another 1,546 were wounded. The age of shooters varied from 12 to 72 years old. 116 shooters were apprehended by law enforcement, 103 committed suicide, and 58 were killed, 55 by law enforcement, and 3 by citizens.
No one can prevent a bad situation from starting. I don't care how wonderful the security is, okay? No one can prevent it from starting. All we can do after that is to mitigate and minimize the damages. What we try to teach, run first, hide if you can't run, and if you can't hide, fight.
An understanding of outcomes from past shootings may help inform your own plan as to how you will react if you are caught in a similar situation. For the County Seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Well, that kind of sets the stage for a really good conversation. We will be back with our panel of experts to discuss this on the County Seat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the County Seat. We are talking today about active shooters and what you can do, what law enforcement can do, and how the two groups of citizens can keep our communities safe. Joining us for a conversation, Sheriff Smith from Utah County and Sheriff Wimmer from Tooele County. And I guess I wanted to start that conversation from the standpoint of you actually recently had a shooting situation. I mean, how do you know? Parkland in Florida, that kid had a record a mile long, but there was no notice for this shooter you had out in your county.
No, we did have that shooting in Grantsville, and Grantsville police have been racking their brains over that situation as to what caused that. But one of the challenges with any active shooter situation is how different they can be from incident to incident. And that's what makes them a little bit spooky, is there's no real specific pattern and capability to prepare for every one of them.
What's the response of a department when you get a call for an active shooter? How different do different departments respond across the state? What do you guys do, Utah County?
Well, I think if you look at the history, if you go back from where this, there was first the wake-up call to the nation, probably go back to Columbine and you look at the response there to where law enforcement is now, it's drastically different. I think on an average statistic, you're looking about 3 minutes before an officer is on scene. So what it looks like for a response, I can give you an example. A few years back, I was chief of police in Pleasant Grove and we had an active shooter incident called out there. It ended up not being a real call, but within about 30 minutes, we had 200 police officers in that high school.
Wow. How are you guys set to respond?
Similarly, obviously we don't have the number of resources that would be available in Utah County, but it would be an all-call response. And it's something that's evolved since Columbine. Columbine was a situation where set up a perimeter, wait for SWAT. Well, active shooter, the shooting's done by the time SWAT ever gets there. And I think of when I went through SWAT school, they were starting to go in as 2, 3, maybe 4-man teams, and that was 2001. And well, now it's you get there, you go in. You confront the shooter or shooters as soon as you possibly can. And so you may be going in as a lone officer by being the first one there, with others following as you get there, as they arrive. And our response, our tactics have had to change significantly, in the past 15 years.
I think on top of that, you've seen, when you talk about SWAT, you've seen the tactics that you teach a SWAT team now being taught to your first line officers. They're being taught the active shooter tactics because we do expect them to go right into the problem and not wait for someone to get there. Statistically, I think you're right around 12 minutes total an active shooter incident lasts. So getting in there immediately to stop the killing is what we're teaching our officers.
How does the community look for the active shooter? Is there a way, is there a pattern, is there something that, we've missed a lot of opportunities like I mentioned, but what are some of the things that in going back and studying it lead to the fact of, oh yeah, this should be an active shooter? In other words, guy on the street, what should I be looking for when I'm in a crowd?
Well, when you're in the crowd, it's hard. Typically, if you go back and you look at some of the data that comes from these shootings, there are signs that were missed or things that people should have picked up on. But for the most part, those are things that were picked up on by people who have something to do with their lives, whether they're a friend or a spouse or a student. They have something to do with them, so there are signs that are out there. It's kind of like, one of the biggest things is just being aware. If you're in a crowd, it's being aware of your surroundings. It's not just being in that condition where I don't care what's going on in the world, it's all about me. You need to pay attention because you will start to notice things. It's like when you go and buy that brand new car and you don't buy the red one because everybody has a red one, and so you buy the white one. As soon as you leave the lot, you're like, wow, there's a lot of white cars just like mine on the road, because you weren't aware to it before. And it's training yourself to be aware of your surroundings and look for things that are out of place.
What's our advice as citizens? Say we're armed or not armed. What should we be doing?
I think you go back to a couple of the different programs that are available that are being taught. FBI does Run, Hide, Fight. There's also Avoid, Deny, Defend, which they're both very similarly, they're similar in principle. Get out if you can, hide if you can't get out, and then of course if the threat is upon you, your last resort is to fight. And that taps into the human basics of fight or flight, and that is very natural for us to revert to them, because you're not going to be thinking real rationally in that situation.
Excellent. I would like to pick up this conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, talk about active shooters on the county seat. Welcome back to the county seat. We are having a conversation about active shooter situations. Growing up watching Westerns and, Matt Dillon and everything, we grow up, you get shot once, and you're down, you're out. Usually there's no blood, but you're just shot once. And people are afraid of that, and I've heard that they actually even fall down and think that they can't move when they actually have all their faculties about them. You still have the ability for flight at that point if you've just been basically shot once in the chest or the arm or something. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think we are a little bit through media and other things preconditioned to think that if we get shot, then it's just over. And that just isn't reality. And, if you get shot, it's going to blow you, 15 feet back through a wall, and that's just not reality. If you get shot, you are capable of fighting through that and continuing on, whether it's to fight or to engage in flight. Either one, you're very much capable of continuing on.
If you're conscious, you still need to continue going whatever direction you were going. If you were on your way out, or maybe at that point it is time to fight. But you need to realize that you're conscious and you're still plenty capable to do a whole lot of battle at that point in time.
So what do you think the underlying situation is? I mean, the first big public shooting was back in the 60s, and then it was almost a decade and a half, and then Columbine happens, and then it becomes more and more frequently, occurring more and more frequently, either in small scale or these massive large scale shootings. Do you think that there's a shift in the mental health of this country?
Yeah, I think it's undeniable that there's there's significantly more mental health challenges amongst our society. And the resources aren't keeping up with it either. And so I think it's going to get progressively worse in that arena before we realize we need to do a little more about it.
What kind of stress does this growing number of incidents put on a department, like neither one of you?
Well, it really becomes a bulk of what we're dealing with. It puts a lot of stress on the officers to not only be a police officer, but now they're supposed to be a social worker or a counselor. Sure. So, we get them in programs to help them deal with that and train them to have the capability to deal with it. But it's kind of a new dimension to law enforcement as more and more things get put on the plate of a police officer.
Yeah, we get training on de-escalation, trying to work around perhaps a mental illness, and then also their specific training is in dealing with the autistic, because that's become more and more prevalent in our society, and it just becomes part of our daily duties, and we just need to be better trained to deal with it.
So does suicide play a role in some of these, hostage active shooter situations? I mean, there's some people that want to die by you hear about it. I don't know if that's a media thing or a real thing.
No,
it's a real thing.
Yeah, and I think the statistics show, and that's why we've modified. Don't wait for another officer to join you. Get there and engage them, because they find that in a fairly high number of active shooter situations, once they are confronted, they take their own life. And so the point is to get that confrontation there, so either the officer is going to eliminate the threat, or they go ahead and duck behind the corner and eliminate themselves. And so that's a strategy actually on law enforcement's part, is to get on scene, get there, and
bring the fight to us.
Yeah,
we're prepared for the fight. Fight us.
Huh. Do you find that those incidents are increasing, and when you have engagement, that more and more becomes an apparent motive in the whole thing?
I think on some of these it's hard, especially when they're dead after the fact, to really drill down exactly what the motive was. But statistically, yeah, you're seeing a lot that commit suicide when officers engage them.
Okay. We're going to take another break here. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do as a community in support of the police department, kind of how to walk yourself through a scenario like that when it comes up. We'll be right back on the County Seat. Welcome back to the County Seat. We are talking about active shooter situations. We've covered some of the motivation for it, some of the trends, but I would really like to spend a little time talking about how we solve the problem. From a policy standpoint, how do we help the sector of the community or get the help they need before it turns into a shooter situation?
In anything, whether it's active shooter, burglaries, any crime, you always have to have the help from the public. You have to have their eyes and ears out there paying attention and letting us know when something doesn't seem right. And if it's a loved one or a neighbor that just seems to be a little off, and we need to start looking at them a little harder, or maybe direct them to some resources that can offer some help, whether it's a mental health issue or any number of issues that could cause someone to go over the edge.
And that call could be the hardest call that you could ever have to make, right? Especially if it's a loved one. But the alternative, if they're allowed to go down a path that they can't return from, is going to be harder.
So here's the scenario. Some sibling knows that their brother, sister, son, daughter is bat crazy, and they want to make a phone call, but they're afraid if they call you, that's going to instantly lead to an arrest. Okay. If the police department or the sheriff's department were contacted, what would you do? I mean, if no crime had been committed yet, what's the procedure to try and get that preventive help?
We would naturally respond, but we work with our mental health authority, and they have a response team that will come out 24/7 and engage some of the resources that are available for someone in crisis. And so, and even if it's not a specific crisis at that very instant, it at least opens the door for them to work on some therapeutic visits that would get them pointed, hopefully, in a direction that would circumvent the road they were on.
Is there some value for people on that first line of defense contacting the sheriff's department and just saying, my son needs help, what should I do? Or should they just go directly to mental health? Or is that valuable information for you to have?
It's valuable. Ultimately, we are going to direct them to resources, and maybe we can help them with other resources that they weren't aware of. But yeah, there's some value for us to be aware of the situation and to be able to help them. And ultimately, that's our goal, is to help people through a crisis. So if there's anything we can do in that way, yeah, there's value in getting us involved.
What is it that gun owners who have concealed carries and have gone through a certain amount of training, if there's an active shooter situation and they've become involved and the police arrive on the scene, what do they need to do? Because I can see you guys are in a quandary.
Everything they're told.
Yeah.
Yeah. If show your hands, show your hands. Get down on the ground.
Ultimately, they need to follow every order that officer gives them when they show up. If they've engaged and the threat is eliminated, then I would suggest put your gun away when the officer arrives, and not have it out waving it around. They need to, ultimately, you need to remember an officer is a person too, so they're gonna be in an excited state. They've trained for this, they know what to do, but it doesn't mean that their blood pressure is not gonna be up a little bit because of it. So don't take things personal when they're telling you, let me see your hands, get on the ground. It's nothing personal. They want everybody to go home safe as well as themselves. So do what they're asking you to do.
And I think another important thing is if you take Trolley Square, where that off-duty, he had his wife call. Well, it would be a very good idea if you had that opportunity to have someone, a bystander, say, call the police, let them know I'm pursuing, and give them my description. So we go in there knowing our friendly is wearing these clothes. And so we can be mentally prepared if we come across that person, be cautious, but they're not don't take them out immediately.
How much information can you get to a responding officer through dispatch in that 2 or 3 minutes to help them be prepared for the situation? Because a lot of people would think, well, the call comes in and they say we got a shooting, and then there's no more conversation on the police radio until they get there. What does that typically look like as you gain information?
The dispatcher is going to keep the person who's calling on the phone, and they're going to ask continual questions. If you're not telling us what's going on, well, they're going to ask you, and they're going to get that information. And all the time they're doing that, there's another dispatcher who's on the radio relaying that information to the officers that are responding. So they're getting out as much information possible to those officers.
In a situation like that, they will lock down that channel to where only those engaged in that situation are on that channel. But the flood of information is almost overwhelming. There will never be a quiet moment on that radio. You will actually find it difficult to key up and get airtime because so much information is going to be getting spewed out by dispatch, by officers responding, and because officers are going to respond and they're going to say, "I'm going in the northeast door." Yeah, and so we can keep track of where one another are, so we don't come upon a friendly on friendly fire situation.
So the ground game with technology has changed quite a bit, I would imagine. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We appreciate you staying tuned there at home to be part of these county seat conversations. They are important. Any support that you can give, anytime you can share these messages, get other people involved in these conversations will be very helpful in preventing situations or modifying situations like this in the future. Share this with your friends on social media. We would love your engagement. We'd love to hear comments from you, and we will look for you next week on the County Seat.
Thank you for watching the County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.